1. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another deck discussion. I am Reverend Roy, pastor at Cornerstone United Methodist Church, and we are honored and privileged to have with us today the Reverend Dr. Vic Willis. Welcome, Vic.
Hi, Roy. Good to see you.
Good to have you with us. Vic and I have a very long history together. He is one of my primary fathers of faith. We met years ago when I was in middle school, actually, but I want to just give Vic an opportunity to share with you a little bit of our history and how we got to know each other.
Well, one of my first memories of you, Roy, was your mom. your mom, Helen, had you by, I think, the earlobe, and she was dragging you down the sidewalk to church. I remember that. I'm not sure if she was punishing you in that twisting of your earlobe, but there was some coercion taking place there to get you to come to church. And I remember that, and I also remember coming to your house when you were in middle school and seeing all the amazing creative stuff that you were into. I forget exactly what they were, but your room was full of this. You're building stuff. You had these ideas just popping all the time, and I thought, what a cool kid. What an interesting guy this is.
What a weird guy.
Well, and then the next thing I remember is there was a need for a recreation director for our youth group, and you weren't quite connected to the youth group much at all at that point. So I called you or went to see you or something and talked to you about it and asked you to, because you were big in sports. So you were kind of the football guy, and you were and then I thought he'd be perfect if he would just say yes. So, and you did. And we had volleyball games, we had football games. I mean, all kinds of stuff that started drawing all these kids to youth group. And you had this natural leadership in you, I saw from the very beginning. So it's been really cool to watch your development, and man, where you are today. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting because everybody has a different view of how that all happens, So my view was, my best friend at the time, Trent Warner, and I were sitting out in the woods on a Sunday thinking, where are all the girls? And I said, I know where there are some girls. They're actually at youth group at my church. And so we went, motivated by the young ladies at our youth group. And that Sunday you had an election for officers. There we go.
Yeah.
Then I got the call after that, and I was like, why not? It was a good time. I remember sitting kind of disgruntled about having to sing. Like I didn't want to be a part of praise music. You brought out your guitar, everybody's singing. Trent and I sat there with our mouths and our arms folded. Not gonna be a singing geek at youth group. And then
I don't remember that part. I just remember you engaging with that. The Petra concert, you remember that?
Oh yeah.
And that was in Fort Myers. And
yeah, you invited us to go. We were still not completely committed yet. And I even said, I'll meet you there. We drove our car separate from you.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
Because we weren't going to be in a youth bus.
Yeah.
And then, man, that night, phew, that's
yeah.
where I heard the words that struck my heart, that Jesus loves you, in a way that I'd never heard before. And that's what changed it all, man.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say Jesus changed it all, but Vic Willis invited me into that place. So thank you for that.
It was just so cool. Those days were really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have fond memories of my high school years and spending time with you and traveling all over the country with all kinds of youth trips.
I was just happy to survive it, Roy, because you took me snorkeling, I think, for my very first time, and didn't really give me any much training about it. You didn't tell me, oh, by the way, don't raise your head while you're out in the middle of the lake, and the alligator infested lake too.
Yeah.
And I sucked in about a gallon of water, and I was hacking and coughing, and I remember that and thinking, oh, I'm going down. I'm going down. You
Die.
guys were over around the edge somewhere looking. I was way far away from you all. Man, that was a
Yeah.
miracle thing. Because
This is what people won't get. I mean, well, they get it because most of the folks that watch these are from Naples area. And,
yeah,
that was a lake in Tall Pines, which is right next to Barron Collier, which back then was not very populated.
uh-huh.
And they had just dug those lakes, and so they were clear. So we like to snorkel in them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took all the rocks out. But your story is the miracle of the one rock, right?
Thankfully, they didn't take one rock out, because as I was going down for the third time, and I knew, I had to have some footing to just cough this water up, and I knew I was out in the middle of the place, and I put my foot down. I thought I'm pretty sure I'm goner, and there was a rock just protruding enough so that I could stand on my tippy toes and cough my lungs out.
Yeah.
And I did. And you guys came rushing over, and we looked afterwards. You remember that, looking down there, and it was just one rock.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a miracle of the one rock.
The miracle of the one rock. Yeah.
I'm just glad I survived. That's all.
Yeah, there's lots of stories you could share. Fire ants biting you while we're rope swinging.
Yeah.
Having to drive 700 miles an hour while we're in the van, wondering what the heck is happening.
Yeah.
Pulling into the emergency room. You left us in the van and ran into the emergency room. We didn't have any idea what was going on.
Oh, it was. I remember y'all got a hold of my wallet and bought me flowers with my own money. It was nice. I really appreciated it.
Hey, it's the thought that counts, right?
I know.
Yeah, we didn't have any money. We also ate, I think. I'm not sure.
You might have. Because I was in there pretty much out. This fire ant or something that bit me, it just swelled my neck up, and I started not being able to breathe. But fortunately, I saw the exit to the hospital on the way to the river that day. And again, another providential thing, and turned into the hospital, ran in, and they hooked me up, and a few hours later, I was able to be released. And you guys were kind of out in the. This is before we had these structures and strictures about how many people you have go with people and all that stuff.
Child protection policy was
exactly. We didn't have, what was that back then? Yeah.
We were left in the parking lot.
I needed a youth director protection policy.
That's right. Those were the days where there was freedom. Yeah, that's why we'll scout it. Yeah.
Oh man,
we've had good times, good memories, and we've kept our relationship going through the years. It's been a privilege to be in the Southwest District for as long as we've been, because we've been able to see each other. But just for everybody's information as how extensive our relationship is, not only did we continue to be together throughout all these years, even when I was in college, driving up and going with your youth groups on whitewater rafting trips and stuff.
Yeah.
Vic was the officiant at our wedding, and also the dual Willis hands laid on my head during my ordination. So, what I'm telling you is you can blame Vic.
Yeah, right. I wish I could take credit, but man, I tell you, you have just you blow me away with where you've gone and what you've done with this calling on your life. It's just been such a joy to watch.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad somebody's appreciating it. It's been a great journey. I do want to segue into our conversation around hope, which is we've been having with colleagues in ministry, and I wanted to make sure that we had this conversation between you and I. And so I've been asking everybody, especially in light of where we find ourselves in the world right now, what does hope mean? How do you define hope?
Yeah, it's lifeblood for me. In fact, a lot of my calling revolves around the story of hopelessness, and that emerged into the light of day and hope. I had a tough 19th year, and that was when basically I was struggling like most people do about what to do with your life and the big questions of why am I here and what's the purpose in life. And it was a really tough year because I had sort of gone into this very, very deep depression. Didn't really know what to call it because I didn't know why I had it. There was no obvious reason why I would be depressed. I had a great family. My parents loved me. Everything was, I was cared for in beautiful ways. And yet here I was. I found myself in this very dark place, very, very dark place. And I remember hope was sort of the theme that helped me emerge from that. And the hope came from getting out of myself. And I please hear that I don't think every depressed person can do what I did and come out of it. This is just my story. I had a little brother, and he was I was 19 at the time. He was probably about 3, and he'd been outside playing, and he threw his ball over the hill. We lived in sort of the country, and a lot of briars and brambles and sticks and stuff. And he couldn't get his ball, and I was rolled up in a fetal position on the front in the front room of my parents' home, and just having the biggest pity party for myself in the world. And yet it was very, very confused. And this was just one incident, but this is where that light of hope kind of emerged for me. My mom said, "Jimmy's ball's going over the hill. None of us can get it. Would you go get it?" And she knew that I know she knew she was just kind of prodding me to get out of myself. But it was amazing, just going through the stickers and the briars and going down that hill and retrieving that little ball for my little brother. Just opened up things because I was all of a sudden not so focused on myself, and that you talk about hope, man, that was like this huge ray of hope. And that was just a small part of what I knew was out there, I think, at the time. And I wanted to explore that. And God's call came as a result of that. It was, it's not about me. Now, again, depression is horrific. And this was just my story. I mean, I know a lot of people can't just go over a hill and pull out of stuff. And I didn't pull out of it immediately, but it was, that whole idea of hope is connected to serving others, I think, and a purpose in life, other than bigger than yourself,
Yeah, I think that's you just are speaking into one of our core mantras, core statements at Cornerstone. Love a story bigger than yourself. And I get people all the time at Cornerstone that talk about, they'll come up to me and they'll say, "Why aren't you preaching more about me?" And I think, man, what a powerful moment. As something as simple as getting your brother's ball out of thickets, to be able to realize that when you can shift your attention away from you to everyone else, there's healing in that.
Absolutely. There was for me, and there still is. I refer back to that so many times when I get into a funk, and that still happens sometimes, not as severely as back then, but certainly usually when I'm in a funk, it's because I'm really self-absorbed in those moments.
I think you're right on in acknowledging that, and I affirm that too, is that there's different levels of depression or even bipolarity that people wrestle with, PTSD.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes it's chemical, and you can't just go down the hill and get your brother's ball. It's something that needs more clinical analysis. And here Vic and I both say, get the help you need for that.
Amen. down the road, as I've been in ministry for as long as I have, I've witnessed a whole lot of folks get a whole lot of help through just the drugs that you need and counseling that you need, and that's really, really important. So yeah. amen to that.
But you also not only brought me to this encounter with Christ, I mean, that you were the conduit for that to happen in my life when I was a teenager, but my mother, all of a sudden just went into a really dark place when I was in high school. And I don't think she minded me talking about this, but because she shares it with everybody, but she will tell people that it was a conversation she had with you about that, because that anxiety that kind of just takes over is real. And it's hard for people to understand the power of that. And sometimes you just need to hear from somebody who's been through it to say, that's legit. It's not craziness.
Right,
It's
exactly.
actually something going on with you that you need to work with, work through.
Yeah. That's I didn't realize that, but that's beautiful. I'm glad to know that. That's
We've got a picture of you on our wall, Vic. No, but it was a gift to us all and to her, because as families deal with other family members who are wrestling with that, it affects everybody. So
yeah.
Esther Rodriguez would, and I shared this a couple times, it was just so impactful in my interview with Esther, talked about hope has to come out of a place of despair, that otherwise it's just kind of like a wish. There's a difference between arising out of some place where it doesn't seem like there's a hope-filled possibility, that for hope to actually exist, you have to come from that place, she says. I think there's some truth to that.
I do too. I resonate with that a lot. In fact, I don't have it right here, but and I don't want to get into the nitty gritty details necessarily, but one night in that season of my 19th year, I was very, very much in this low spot. And I remember going home after an amazing encounter with, I believe, one of those prevenient grace moments with Jesus, and writing in my Living Bible, not even the Living Translation yet, but the Living Bible, the big red ones. And I wrote in the front of it, I said, I have had an encounter with Satan that night, that, and then I saw Satan fight Christ with all his force, and Christ emerged victorious. And, you can read the Bible stories and you don't understand that's a truth, but until it sort of happens for you in a struggle of despair versus hope, or any kind of struggle, until that you see that and you actually know that God is real. There's this story is not just a story, and those are the ways that I described it in the front of my Bible at that time, and again, that was another step in God saying, okay, not only am I giving you hope in this moment, but I'm giving you a purpose for your life. You need to go tell other people about the reality of me. And God was saying that to me, and that's how the call sort of developed, and they emerged out of that hopelessness, that despair, and then coming into the light of the truth of God's love for us, and just embracing that.
Yeah, I was sharing that with the congregation yesterday at our little outdoor service, that we talk about when people go through really difficult times, whether it be the loss of loved ones or family members, those kind of really difficult challenging times. But I can't imagine navigating life apart from that story bigger than ourselves. To not have something that lets us know we belong to love and belong to community that is wrapped in that love, which is driven by God and by the power of the Spirit. Right. I mean, if it's
you don't know
what
do they have to hang on to? What I mean, everything else is sort of It does eventually fade away. It does dissolve before your eyes. Everything else. Yeah, you're right. I've wondered that same thing. There's an element of delusion there, I think, that until that bubble is burst somewhere, and then they realize there's got to be more, and that can be a wonderful, devastating but wonderful place to be.
That's right.
So that at least they're turning and looking, and I think getting to another question of yours, the purpose of the church is to be there in those moments for people to see that, yeah, this is real, and we need to embody that as a church.
That is the next question, is like, so what would you identify as being the essential work right now for the church?
Gosh, right now is sort of the operative phrase there, because right now is a very different time, and yet, it's not that different from. We kind of put this pandemic thing in a box of it's never been this bad before. It's been a lot worse, I think, in some respects. But we're all feeling the isolation, and I think right now for me in my pastoring of this church is a connecting of people in ways that are safe, and helping them to sort of see their role now as being in exile or in the diaspora, out and doing the ministry. We used to do big things here where a lot of people would come in, and there would be that opportunity for people to get that hope and help from big group gatherings. That's not happening right now, of course. So my encouragement to the Christians in exile, so to speak, is to find ways of doing that in their own worlds right now, and to be the hands and feet of Jesus to their neighbor. To the person in their family that just doesn't get this and is so lonely, and so that in this moment, in right now, I'm feeling like that's the work of the church.
Yeah, I remember, and I can't remember who said this to me, but it's always stuck in my head. Is that they said your greatest influence is within the 3 feet around you. In other words, that we all oftentimes think that, and you see this on Facebook just because people post a quadrillion agenda-driven comments, thinking that somehow that post is going to revolutionize or change the world to view everything through their lens, But the reality is, I've yet to hear of anybody be converted on Facebook to anything,
Yeah.
It
just drives deeper wedges, doesn't it?
That's right. Just make them pissed off at each other. So, it is the 3 feet around me. It's the people that I encounter every day that are within that sphere. Now it's 6 feet around me. Sorry. But
yeah,
it's a person that I can see face to face to have a heart to heart conversation about the things that matter in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. And we've had a lot more time to do that, which is a blessing. I really do feel like it's living out the faith now in this unusual environment in new ways. We got to figure it out in new ways, or we're just sort of treading water, and there's a lot of people sort of spiraling into that thing we just talked about, into despair and hopelessness, because they don't feel like they have a purpose anymore. You and I were talking about an event that both of us had in our respective churches last night. First one for us, for months. And just the fact that people could see each other. I mean, we weren't hugging and shaking hands and high-fiving, but we were in visual contact with each other. Was such a relief for folks. It was an amazing moment to watch. It really was.
Yeah. And I wonder, because I was talking with somebody yesterday about this too, because one of the conversations being had, like, as essential work, is trying to navigate which we're doing. I think adaptively we're responding to the moment, right? So we can only act with the information we have with the right now. It's kind of stoicism. You have to return to this kind of stoic world, you know, like in the moment we're going to do this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I wonder, you know, because you hear people talking about it's never going to be the same again, blah, 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 blah. Well, my life has never been the same again, ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every time I walk out the door, I'm different, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
so, and then I wonder if maybe the rebound effect, when it does get to a point where people can be closer together, might actually be a desire for community, physical gathering again. I don't know if I totally agree with this idea that we're going totally digital, that there's not going to be a desire or an opportunity. I think maybe we just have to be prepared also that we have to provide an opportunity for people to gather like they did before.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Who knows the end goal of this thing and in the end result of it, but I don't think there's ever going to just go away the need for us to be in physical contact with one another. It's just, I mean, we're wired for that.
That's what Christianity
We used to
is.
say, what, it takes 14 hugs a day to stay healthy. I mean, we don't say that anymore. We haven't said that for a while, you know.
It takes 3 masks, disposable masks, to stay healthy now. I think, you know, because at the heart of our faith is incarnation. It's presence. I mean, you were talking about this pandemic being the worst ever. It's no, I've been reading about the pandemics of the past, and they were terrible. I mean, the Black Plague, the whatever they called it, sleeping fever of Rome in the 3rd century.
We've got it quite cushy right now compared to those, for sure, no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, I can play games on my computer. You know?
Right. Yeah.
I'm in air conditioning. I have a box of food dropped off on my doorstep from HelloFresh, you know.
Exactly.
I'm out there with a stick chasing a rat.
Yeah. 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 We are somewhat pampered in that regard. You know, it is an amazing. I mean, we get into our minds that this is just horrific, and the idea of everyone getting back to the way it was. What you touched on just a minute ago, Roy, is I think very, very true. We do want to get back to the way it was, but I think when we do, and I do believe we will, we'll appreciate it so much more. I think there'll be a deeper appreciation, a deeper valuing of community, physical contact community. This is cool. Zoom is cool. I mean, I feel like I'm right there in the same room with you, but you're missing something when you're not face to face. And you know, I look forward to that. I know it's been a underlying just sort of malaise that has I think affected everyone. I know it has affected me. Just this not being able to be in touch with people.
We talked about that, you and I, as far as clergy having a need, being, for the most part, even whether you're extrovert or introvert, you're still a people person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the ministry. Yeah. I mean,
you have to learn to be anyway. Yeah.
You actually have to love people. Yes.
You have to.
Yeah. And when I'm not seeing people face to face or physically being present or having conversations, you know, there's that disconnect leads to anxiety, and it's not necessarily real. It's a false kind of anxiety because we start assuming what's going on, and that messes with you.
It does. It does. It has a pandemic effect in your brain. It really does. It can take over, and you can start imagining things that aren't there. And there's a lot of benefits to that constant contact that we need. You know.
Yeah. So the third question is about the future. It's about what is your hope, and we kind of touched a little bit on that at the end of this question, but they all relate. So what is your hope for the future of the church?
Well, I think to be less institutional, less dependent on realizing our call is an everyday thing, every moment thing, not just a every week thing that when we get together at a certain time, but that we live this thing, that we don't just save it for special moments, and that Jesus is actually seeking to use us right now, where we are in that 3 to 6 foot space, and the future of the church, I think, is necessarily going to look different for that reason, even though we still will need to have that physical contact, but maybe in deeper ways, with fewer people. I don't know. The church, I don't think, was ever, getting into a structural thing here that can take away so many of the special elements of the relationship, and it can really affect the relationship, the structure that we put into place to make sure things are orthodox or whatever.
Yeah.
It can really hinder that essential relationship that Jesus came to relate to us, and I think the future of the church, my hope for the future of the church is we focus more on that than we do the structure and I think this pandemic is amazingly helping us with that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just the opportunity now for people to gather and to be present and to share their faith in smaller scales, to return towards a more house church model, to be more intentional in our community.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who have been practicing that for years now. I mean, in my connection with the Ecclesia Project, there's a lot of members of the Ecclesia Project that are connected to what we call alternative Christian communities or house churches, whether it be JPUSA in Chicago or Reba Place in Chicago or Christ the Servant King. And it's these folks that have decided to live intentionally in community, and they're not big. There are maybe 30 members. Some are bigger, but that's about the average.
Mm-hmm.
They share things in common, and they have houses, and they renovate neighborhoods, and they become an embodiment of good news.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe that's a good word. That's where gospel comes from, right?
The embodiment of good news. You got it. Yeah. And I think we're practicing that by necessity right now. And I hope that becomes, I'm looking at retirement in a few years, and another one of those.
I would never guess that.
Yeah, right.
You've at least got 15 to 20 more years, right?
I should put up a picture of us back in the 80s, but I don't know how to do that with the technology. I'm so old. I don't,
Yeah, you send me a picture, I'll post it, put it out there for Cornerstone to see only.
Okay. Yeah. But, no, the future of the church, I think, with retirement coming on, my point is I've thought about what does it look like without what I've been doing, and it's really the similar question we've been talking about here. Do we hang our hope on the wrong things, I guess, and do we hang our purpose on the wrong things? Even within the structure of the church, we can do that, and so a reevaluation of what it is that's the essence of the church and essence of that hope, that gospel embodiment that I think we're all called to, is something that I'm doing as I near retirement. And what does that look like when you don't have a church anymore? You don't have this routine of being officially a Christian leader, how do you then embody it in this new realm? You just wait, my friend. You'll be there in about 10 years or so, and you'll have these same questions, I think.
I've already got the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Part of it is 12 years till retirement. I mean, till I'm 65. So I mean, I know most people think I'm in my 20s, but but I mean, the questions also, and I've talked about this with other folks, is that, I'm a staff person in a lot of people's eyes. I'm paid to do this work. I'm part of Christendom, the last hurrah of Christendom. You and I are both that, and you and I had a conversation this week actually about what that looks like. We're products of an institution that has given us certain comforts that I can't imagine living without.
Right.
Right. But the big but in that is that there's a certain amount of freedom not being bound by that institution. Like
Absolutely.
if I'm not paid, I'm not held under anybody. There's no strings attached. I try to live that way anyways, but it's hard.
You do it well, Roy. I want you to know I that's one of the places I'm proudest of you in the way that you have detached yourself from some of the coercion that I think is innate in those hierarchical things that we just attach ourselves to, and it's inevitable. I mean, we have to deal with that. But I really have admired the way that you've not let that be a controlling factor in your life, in your ministry.
Well, thank you for that. That's not an easy thing. I had a gentleman who's been a faithful part of Cornerstone, and he's one of our leaders that kind of, most of our leaders get it, but I mean, he really is working hard to live into this being an embodiment of really good news. And he talks about, because people will say, why don't we have 1,000 people at Cornerstone? And the reality is, and you know this too, is that I'm going to always put my focus on reaching out to the marginalized folks or people groups.
Right.
And that's not going to be that's not the game that most people want to be a part of, and that's a challenge. But all of that has been growth from being around folks that have influenced me in a way, and I've seen them live the witness out in their life. And you're that person, part of that cloud of witnesses that is in Roy Terry's collection of saints.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. It's been a real interesting journey, raising 4 kids and doing about 6 moves in the United Methodist system, and having every congregation be they're so similar and yet so different, and then growing from each one of those. I think back to those early days when I was first testing my call out, and those are the days you're talking about when we first met back in my youth director days at First Church in Naples, and just the simplicity of things for me back then. It's what I'd like to be able to maintain and go back to in some respects. It's just the simple trust in Christ for things that are, scary.
Yeah.
Things that you might not want to step into because of all those voices around. But I did it so much easier back then, and I'd like to get back to that. And
yeah.
I'm always thinking about that. But it's it's been good talking with you today. I've enjoyed this very much.
Thank you for taking time to be a part of the deck discussion, and thank you for sharing from your heart. And simpler days.
I'm not sure that's in the future, but
I think simpler days. Would you agree that simpler days are all about relationships?
It is.
It's like where you're not caught up in maintaining a building and having a budget approved and figuring out how your staff aligns and how you're going to compensate people. Because when it comes to that economics of it, man, gets so cloudy.
It does. It messes with the whole mission and messes with the whole, motivation of purpose and all. It really does. The relationships.
So I don't want to not also mention that you're married to a spectacular person, Debbie, and Debbie was a major impact in my life too. And I have a close relationship with Debbie because I'm the only person I think who's ever broken her finger.
That's true. You are. She's never broken any bone in her body except for that one finger that you helped break that night.
Yep.
I think it was the clothespin deal, wasn't it?
Yep. The great game that you invented. Putting clothespins on people's clothes, and the person that had the most was the loser, right?
That's right.
Well, I'm not going to lose.
That's right. So Debbie gets her finger on one of the clothespins on your shirt, and you twist. All of a sudden, you twist your entire body around, and guess what? Her finger twists off. Not off, but yeah.
A lot of screaming. Yeah.
A little bit of screaming.
Yeah.
And she also will remember you, for Roy, for the cat the cat trip that we took. You know, the cat standing for Christian Adventure trip that we took, and I think you sat behind her with a boom box. Remember the 1980s boom box?
Yeah.
And played your music all the way up the Appalachian Trail. I mean, it was like, you know, and I remember her always turning around about every third minute saying, "Would you turn that down?"
Yeah. Listening to harder music while you're cruising through the Appalachian Trail, the Blue Ridge Mountains, probably wasn't Debbie's idea of a relaxing moment.
No.
And we rocked hard. I mean, that's
Oh, the air bands.
Oh yeah.
I could probably send you your church a clip of you playing the air guitar as a 17-year-old. So I'll have to do that. Send that to you. Can I trust you to show it to them?
Oh, I could show it to them. Yeah, I've got a big enough ego. I can handle that. The other part that I think is interesting is that transition from being the kid with his arms crossed, not wanting to sing, to being the person that's forcing people to sing.
Isn't that amazing? It really is. You know, I hadn't remembered that part of your resistance to that. I didn't remember that.
You wouldn't have noticed it because we were polite. We were not going to sing.
Right.
But everybody was singing.
You didn't want to sing in the choir. I remember the youth choir. You didn't want to sing, but then finally you and Trent and the rest of them even joined the choir. I've got video of that too.
Man, that was another day, huh? Where kids were forced to sing in choir.
Right. It was another day.
That was a part of youth group. I mean, if you told my kids, the Cairo crew at our youth group, that you had to go to choir before you went to youth group, their minds would pop off their shoulders.
That was another day. You are absolutely right.
But we all learned to sing that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn how to sing parts, and I mean, we hated it. I mean, Jerome Edwards was a wonderful man, but he was a dictator.
He was. He really cracked the whip. He did. But I do have a video of you guys cracking up in the back row of the choir while he was just trying to get you guys to make a noise. You know, it was. I have to send you.
I still remember one of the songs. That was Sinner Man. Oh, yeah. Sinner Man, where you gonna run to?
I think that's the clip I have. That's the clip I have.
Little you know, all the sinner men were in the back making jokes about the choir director.
Right.
Well, thank you, Vic, and thank you for sharing. And
you're welcome. Thank you. This has been a joy. It really has. Love you, Roy.
Love you too.